evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Mirror Now. This is Urban Debate and I am Hina Gambhir. It is a very, very important day, viewers, for India. Another phase of vaccination drive has begun today. As per CoWIN platform, 37,84,212 children in the age group of 15 to 17 were vaccinated till 7 p.m. on the first day of COVID vaccination for children. Now, this is crucial as the COVID cases across the country are rising quite sharply. Mumbai has reported 8,082 fresh infections today. For second day in a row, the COVID tally has remained above 8,000 in 24 hours. Delhi, meanwhile, witnessed yet another worrying surge, most likely driven by the new Omicron variant. There were 4,099 infections that were recorded in the last 24 hours. As a result, states have started imposing their own restrictions. Even though this threat is universal, the solutions have to be area-specific. Now, the good doctor is the best medicine for a pandemic. Unshakable spirit of dedication and improvisation against all odds by doctors in India helped us tackle the situation so far. And that is why today we have a doctors' roundtable lined up for you. Men of medicine to prepare us for what can be a challenging tomorrow. Joining us on the broadcast this evening is Dr. Subramanian Swaminathan, Director, Infectious Diseases, Gleneagles Global Health City, joining us from Chennai. Dr. Kaushik Lahiri, Founder VP, West Bengal Doctors Forum from Kolkata, will be joining us in just a bit. Dr. Rahul Pandit, Director, Critical Care Fortis Hospital, Mulund, and member of COVID-19 Task Force Maharashtra, live with us this evening. We will also be joined by Dr. Hemant Thakur, Cardio-Metabolic Specialist, Breach Candy Hospital. Appreciate all of you for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. Dr. Hemant Thakur, let me begin the discussion with you. What do you make of the spike in cases that we are seeing, at least in Delhi and Mumbai? Specifically, 4,000 plus cases have come in Delhi. For second day in a row, 8,000 plus cases have been reported in Mumbai in a single day. Is this the Omicron variant that is leading to this kind of a spike? Or do you think we are now testing more? That's the reason why more numbers are coming out.
I think this is a sine qua non. This is Omicron, no question about it. You're looking at numbers, we are looking at patients. You're in the TV room, we are in the hospital. We're seeing how the patients in the clinic and in the hospitals are coping. They are very mildly symptomatic. They have short-lived illness. And the numbers are just overtaking everything else. Just yesterday, I had a phone call from the Cornell University in America, where the whole dormitory of 1,200 people were all tested positive with Omicron in the middle of December. And not one of them had to go to the hospital. By the same token, my colleagues will agree that you don't need genome sequencing only to say this is Omicron or because we are testing more. We are forced to test more because people with cough, cold, and throat. And that's where it steps and stops. We are not seeing infection going down. We are seeing infection evaporating in 2, 3, 4 days. This is Omicron. And this is not surprisingly, because we are going to see more and more numbers, because it's going to spread like wildfire. I've also said on previous channels that this is, if I can liken it to a COVID caress, where the COVID Omicron is going to roll over the entire society, make everybody seropositive. And then we need to see whether, like South Africa, we will have a dip in the number of cases and the wave will blow away. This is my reading of the situation.
Okay. Dr. Swaminathan, what is your understanding, your assessment of the scenario right now across the country and in Chennai specifically?
The numbers are going up everywhere. Chennai and in Tamil Nadu as such, the numbers are doubling fairly fast. There's been a 4-fold increase in the last 1 week is what the official sources tell me. I'm on the task force as well in Tamil Nadu. And the numbers are picking up. And like Dr. Thakur pointed out, there's no point doing genome sequencing because I understand that the sequencing data that's coming out from certain sources are showing that Omicron is now starting to lead the roost in terms of the predominant genotype that we are noticing even in India. Therefore, I think we just need to look at the absolute numbers, and we need to start looking at febrile illnesses as possible COVID unless otherwise proven. So, I mean, to expect that we'd be different from what is happening in UK, US, South Africa, or any other part of the world would not make any sense. And therefore, I suspect that we are all on the same kind of a trajectory where we're going to go up into the exponential phase. I suspect we're already in the exponential phase where the numbers are piling up very, very fast. And remember, the doubling time was about 2 days or less in the UK. So I suspect we would be just as bad, if not worse or whatever it is. And that leads for a very sharp, short spike. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of collateral issues which go into that. And those are the ones which will set us apart on how well we handle it.
Okay. Dr. Kaushik Leri, how is the situation like in Bengal as we speak? The sense that we are getting is that this is all driven by Omicron. Probably there's no need for genome sequencing as much it was needed before Omicron case count started going up the way it is right now. Your opinion, sir?
Yes, I entirely agree with my colleagues. I think I'm audible. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I entirely agree with my colleagues from other cities, but actually in Bengal, in last 7 days, definitely it is the increase is exponential. In my city is from around 200 cases. Now today we are having 2,800 cases, and the rate of positivity in the whole of Bengal is about 20%, and in the city it is more than 20%. We always knew that it is coming, and it is pointless to do the genome sequencing, and we all know it is Omicron. We all know whether this is a combination of flu and Omicron, as some scientist in Israel has pointed out. But the problem is, the political leadership always knew, be it in the center or on the state, it was allowed. But I don't know how we will handle the sheer number. That is, as a physician, as a clinician, I'm concerned about the number only. Look at the number of patients in a country like UK, where you have a population of hardly 6 crore, and they had a spike reaching 193,000. It is coming down. Definitely, it's a good sign. And in US, they had a population of hardly about 33 or 35 crore. They had per day, they crossed 5 lakh. So if that is translated to India, only it is definitely, we all know. I entirely agree with my colleagues that it is harmless. Only 2 or 3% are getting sick. Otherwise, it's absolutely fine. But sheer number, it may overpower the system. That is the concern.
Okay. Dr. Rahul Pandit, we also saw how our health infrastructure during the second wave also was badly impacted because the infrastructure couldn't really handle the numbers, the spike. We are seeing a similar situation right now, but the difference is that at least the patients are mildly symptomatic, the disease doesn't seem to be as severe as we saw during the Delta period. So are people still coming to hospitals because they are worried right now? What is it that you have observed?
So there are a few distinct things which I have observed, and I'm sure everybody else will agree with that. One is that the number we are testing, probably equal number of them are actually testing with an antigen kit at home, and they're probably not reporting. So I think there is a lot of patients who are at home with mild or asymptomatic disease completely, and they're not coming to the hospital. Those patients who are reporting to the hospital are the ones who are obviously having a concern and they are panicking a bit as well, quite obviously, because they may be having either comorbidities or they may have had severe disease with COVID-19 in the last 18 or 19 months. They are the ones who are actually seeking care in the hospital. But all of them, literally all of them, have got very mild and a short-lived disease. So it is a disease which sort of has mild symptoms. Headache seems to be one of the prominent ones, fever, a little cough and cold, and it sort of stays on for 2 to 4 days, and most patients are becoming asymptomatic after that. I am a little bit worried about the healthcare infrastructure in 2 different milestones. So one is that hospitalizations usually lag around 2 to 3 weeks from the start of cases. So if I was to take the case of Mumbai, Mumbai started seeing cases in high numbers really around 20 to 20th or 22nd of December. So I would wait till 15th of January to be assured that we are following the same trajectory as what South Africa followed and some of the other European countries followed, where hospitalization stayed low, the mortality stayed low. And the second milestone would be if at all this K wave continues, which is what we are all fearing for, and reaches the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, would the patients from tier 2 and tier 3 cities come to the bigger towns to seek help? Because the infrastructure there may not be able to cope up. We may have a good infrastructure in the big metropolitan cities, but the smaller towns may not have that kind of infrastructure. And if they start coming to the cities to seek treatment, then we might be overwhelmed. I think these are the two milestones we have to look at and be very watchful about it. So to keep an eye on the ball and see how things move forward.
Okay, Dr. Hemant Thakur, now I want to understand from you, because one thing is clear that the third wave has already begun. Can you explain to us a little bit about the similarities or differences that you are witnessing right now if you compare it to the beginning of the Delta variant, the wave that was triggered by Delta variant in India?
I think your question is very valid from the point of view of the fact that quite a few epidemiologists have cautioned that even the initial cases of Delta were not so bad, and then they metamorphosed into seriousness. However, on the ground, we are seeing patients getting more upper respiratory tract symptoms. They have a severe pain in the throat. They have a tickle and an itch in the throat. They are not getting breathless. Their cough is not severe. They are not having drop in saturation and difficulty in breathing. And the fact that everything is petering out in a day or two, people say that they had severe backache and very bad throat ache on Monday night. But by Tuesday evening, symptoms seem to be melting. Given this at the ground level, we are hoping that we go the South Africa way. I agree with Dr. Pandit that South Africa is a small country. We are a huge country. So we'll have masses of people. We'll probably run out of kits and numbers to count them. We've gone from 300 to 8,000 in Mumbai. We could go up more. But I know also the fact that like CDC, which has shortened the duration of keeping the patient isolated, we at the ground level are also keeping vaccinated people with mild symptoms now for between 10 to 12 days, because this is Omicron. I'm sure all of us on this panel agree that there is community transmission. You can ban the flight coming in from Timbuktu. You can prevent, it's like an IPL match. Your team, my team, who plays, who doesn't play. There is probably a method in that madness also. Everybody wants to protect his or her state. I have nothing against that. But there is community transmission. If the fellow from the other state doesn't give it to you, all the others from your state will give it to you. So the lesson that we have to preach from your channel today is that it may be community transmission. It is believed to be mild, but don't take it lightly. Don't let your guard down. The best medicine is still the mask, because the mask will not only screen Omicron or corona variants, but it will also screen influenza. Today we know that CDC has said the influenza test and the COVID test overlap. Nobody wants a flu. Nobody wants to be sick in winter. And everybody is fed up of isolation and quarantine. The banks, industry, social, marriages, everybody is fed up. So if we behave ourselves, if we follow the rules, if we follow our doctors and listen to advice given by your channels, I think this wave should all be done and we'll have a happy Holi.
Well, absolutely. We are all looking forward to a happy Holi this time because last year was quite bad, and the images clearly are there in our mind the moment we think about even the second wave, how devastating clearly it was for each one of us. And that's the reason why, gentlemen, we are having this discussion as well today to make our viewers as well aware. They don't have to panic. They need to be aware of what they can do, how they can protect themselves and their loved ones. Now, talking about the approach that governments really need to take at this point in time, a point that's also touched upon by Dr. Hemant Thakur, Dr. Kaushik Lahiri. Now, last year, say in March 2020, let's talk about that phase when it began. It was more of an unknown. We had no idea about it. Around the second wave, we at least had the vaccine, but now we are dealing with a known unknown. We also have an idea about how this Omicron variant seems to be behaving. Of course, we can't be sure about how it is going to behave in India, but we have a reference point. Do you think there needs to be a more holistic approach, or do you think the state governments, as they are coming out with their own rules, is the right way forward?
I can't help being a little sarcastic because after this last 2 years, there's unfortunately no protocol what exactly needs to be done and when. By this time, we all know that COVID actually loves to go to the school, colleges, and universities. COVID is very studious. So you need to close down all the schools, all the educational institutions. For last 2 years, there's absolutely no study. Forget about the urban population who are connected to the net and can do the online class. That is a minuscule of the whole real India, number one. Number two, half of COVID goes to the bar, stay there for 10 p.m. Half of COVID go to the shopping mall or go to the cinema halls. And COVID always attacks after 11 at night. And COVID takes the selected flight, and if you carve some flight from these areas, COVID will always follow this. So there is absolutely no protocol. All these restrictions are knee-jerk reaction. Suppose if it is based on scientific evidence, suppose if we have a rate of positivity more than 5, we need to do this. If it is more than 10, we need to increase the restriction to this level. Or when it is again coming down, the wave is coming down, if it is the rate of positivity is coming down, the hospital, the bed occupancy is coming down, we need to gradually lift up one by one. Do we have this protocol in time? No. We all are doing as and when it is happening. So there is absolutely no protocol based on health science we are following. We are doing this when the first in 2020 March, April, we knew nothing. You told that it is no, we knew nothing. So why the restrictions and all this so-called Janta curfew or whatever it was done just to buy some time? We didn't have enough bed, we didn't have enough oxygen cylinder, we didn't have enough ICU, we had nothing. But now all this restriction, but funny thing is, the same, the political leaders who are running the country and the states of any political party, they go to the electioneering and there is absolutely no COVID restriction, no COVID protocol. The same person are telling dawai bhi and kadai bhi, but they don't use any mask when in any electioneering. So that is something, as doctors, we are really very sad. We are absolutely, shocked. And please do not tell that we are COVID martyrs. When a doctor is dead, don't tell COVID martyrs. These are all collateral damage. And we are allowing this. And I hope this third wave will go up and come down. We'll have a very happy Holi and everything. But otherwise, the situation may not always follow what we think will happen.
That's an important point that you're raising, and I want to quickly go across to Dr. Hemant Thakur as well. Then I'll go across to my other guest. Okay, we'll try and reconnect with Dr. Hemant Thakur in just a bit. But before that, Dr. Swaminathan, you heard. Okay, Dr. Thakur is back. I think he has to leave quickly. But let me just put in one more question before he goes. Sir, I wanted to understand from you. Now we are seeing, in a way, knee-jerk reactions. Night curfews are being imposed, suddenly schools are being shut, and then flights are being stopped from some specific locations. What do you make of these kind of restrictions? And with the way the positivity rate is right now, the way cases are rising, the way Omicron has become a big threat, and the way it has triggered this third wave, what should be the right approach? Should center now come out with a graded sort of a formula, just like we have it in the national capital, that all the states can follow? Or do you think the solutions have to be area specific?
I think your question again is valid, because though COVID is a national phenomena, we have small pockets or large pockets which are larger in certain states and cities. And while the center has correctly laid down guidelines, certain states have to be more aggressive in those areas where the surge is massive or where there is a potential for a huge tidal wave of cases. If you ask me about night curfew and restrictions, it is unfortunate that in India, the government gives us vaccines. The doctors and nurses and healthcare workers give their blood, toil, sweat, and tears. The media carries all the information, but the community doesn't want to wear masks. They do not follow restrictions. They wear their masks on the chin. They want to break these rules. And that's where I'm reminded that ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And that is practice your distancing. And because we cannot follow this voluntarily, the government, whether it is the center or the state, has no choice but to enforce curfew. You need to interrogate and bring on the channel the families that have either been widowed or rendered childless or parentless of the 2020 epidemic of Delta. And they will tell you what the loss is and what their loss is. How can the people in the community who want everything, the vaccines on time, they want the medicines on time, they want oxygens loaded, what are you doing? You cannot only have a one-sided relationship, and therefore curfews have to be enforced. The rule of the law has to be put in. And these curfews are a must, because the markets, the gatherings, the carelessness will only add to the surge. So what if it's mild? If we run out of dispensaries, if we run out of laboratory personnel, or if we run out of basic vitamin pills and other things, it's going to be disastrous. We have a huge population, a larger country. We are not South Africa. I know of countries in the West where they've run out of kits. In India, you get a report in 4 to 8 hours. In the US, you get a report after 3 days. You can walk in and get your RT-PCR done in this country and have no qualms about it. In the US, you have to book an RT-PCR. When you have facilities like this, you cannot forget your duty to prevent the surge, to prevent the transmission, and that is masking, distancing, and obedience. I think the state is right, the center is right. It is an amalgam of the two which has to lead the way forward.
Absolutely, and a participation from people is something which is very, very important. If the people do not follow the rules that are being announced, that we will not be able to win this war against COVID and now Omicron, the new threat specifically. Dr. Swaminathan, now, what is your opinion on these knee-jerk reactions that we are seeing? For example, people are using masks as their chin guards, but then from the government side, we are getting measures like night curfews. I mean, many would ask, why do we not have this curfew-like situation during the day when most people are out? Why don't we have different kind of measures, that will actually help us cut down on our COVID case count during the day when people are actually out of their homes instead of night? Is there any logic?
We are assuming that all of this is going to make a difference at this point of time. If you look at what happened in South Africa, once they reached about a 2% test positivity rate, it went to 20% in less than 1 week, just about 7 days' time. The doubling rate is so fast. We are almost there. So right now, unfortunately, the time for debating about which intervention to be done is actually over. It doesn't matter what intervention you do now, the wave is here. And given the speed of it, I expect that the wave is going to peak this month. So in about 2 weeks' time, you'll start seeing places of India already peaking. And remember, any intervention that you do in terms of reduction of transmission takes at least 2 to 3 weeks for it to show a benefit. So whether you do some form of lockdown or whatever it is, I'm not recommending it, by the way. It's a little too late for us to be discussing that because I think we just need to start learning to roll with the punches. It does not mean that we should give up and say it doesn't matter, anyway it's going to happen. That's not true. The point is that people need to understand that the reason for doing all of this is for personal safety. You may not get very sick, but you may have a loved one at home who has medical issues or older people who may get sick, and that is scary. Please understand that it's not that Omicron is without death. If you look at what happens in South Africa, mortality is about 16% of the Delta peak, which is about 1 in 6. So if you're going to talk about a 1 in 6 mortality, extrapolating what's happening from South Africa, with the understanding that it may or may not happen that way, it's still a lot of numbers. It's not numbers which you can scoff at and say, oh, okay, it's not, nobody's dying. People are dying. People are dying. And also remember, if you fall sick and you have to come to a hospital, you may or may not be able to access care. I don't know how many of people have read what happened in Patna. I believe in a hospital, 87 doctors have tested positive. There have been cluster outbreaks of COVID in healthcare staff all over the world. Healthcare absences has rocketed due to COVID among healthcare providers in the Western world as well. Therefore, there is going to be a severe pressure on healthcare providers. Even if the numbers don't go up, caring for people is going to remain a problem. Now, how are you going to take care of people when you have infected healthcare workers? They need to be quarantined, they need to be in isolation, they need to be off work. And if this is going to happen, and with these numbers, I am worried that people may not have people to help them even if they ask for help. So my simple suggestion is this. The best helping hand is at the end of your own arm. If you can't, have the good sense to use that and make sure that you stay safe, expecting help from a third party may or may not happen. And it's not a great idea for you to put your life in somebody else's hands at the time of a critical situation. And a simple thing as far as masking and distancing is going to be tremendously effective in terms of mitigating the kind of a disaster that anybody could go through, any family could go through. And I think it's about time that the public woke up and realized that this is not something that should be taken as a very simple or a laughing matter.
Okay, Dr. Rahul Pandit, but how can we bring that change within the people? How can we ensure that people actually follow these rules? Because the sense that we are getting is that, people on the streets feel somebody else will wear the masks and they will remain safe. How do we change that mindset? What will you like to tell the viewers at this point in time as to how important wearing a mask is right now? And everybody will have to wear it. It's not that your neighbor needs to follow the protocols and you can go out in the market or in malls or in restaurants and other places.
So just to put out simply what the previous 2-3 speakers have said, if the viewers want that there should be no lockdown, it is not in government's hand, it is in their own hands. I'm again repeating the same thing which has been said just in different words to simplify that. How do we get the message across? Well, there are many ways in which we could do that. One of the simple ways of understanding is that if both the people are wearing a mask and if one of them is infected, the likelihood that he will pass on the infection to the other person comes down into single digits and decimals. I'm talking about decimals. And if one of them is not wearing a mask, then you're almost certainly going to get infected with the Omicron variant. On top of that, we also know that what kind of a mask you can wear. You can wear a double mask and step out. The attitude should be that I'm going to step out of the house with the understanding that anybody I meet outside is likely to infect me. If you start thinking that way and start wearing a mask and have some self-discipline of not removing the mask at all, that's when you'll be able to do it. And the third and most important thing is that India is an icon following nation. I've been saying this in the last couple of channels as well. So our icons, whether it's the political icons, celebrities in film stars, cricketers, leaders, doctors, whoever it is, I think we need to all follow those examples ourselves first. So if the icons start using a mask, people who follow them will start emulating them, will start actually following them, and they will realize the importance of it. So I think it's in citizens' hand. It's not just in doctors' hands or in the administrator's hand to try and impose the behavior. It is actually everybody's shoulder. We need to take our own decisions responsibly. We need to follow those decisions responsibly, and that goes right from the highest person in the country to the person on the street who should be able to wear a mask, avoid crowded congregations, and stay at home if not required. But at the same time, the economy needs to run, their own household needs to run. At least they need to understand that when that needs to run, they need to actually follow some self-discipline and self-restraint so that they can go to work, earn their livelihood, but at the same time stay safe as much as they can.
Okay, and talking about the issue of the health infrastructure, the doctors, how overworked they are already because of this pandemic that we are into, Dr. Pandit, what do you recommend? How important is going to be the role of primary health centers or private clinics in us fighting this wave? How can they be also made important stakeholders now that we know how this can at least be looked into, which we probably didn't know during the second wave when everybody was rushing to a government or a private hospital because of the need for oxygen or a hospital bed?
So, in fact, even on the task force, we have actually emphasized that if this wave does indeed go the way South African or the UK wave is going, home-based care is going to be one of the most important aspects to actually look at. 95% plus patients will probably require to be self-quarantined, to be home quarantined and looked after at home. The numbers are going to be huge. That is why the primary doctor, not just a hospital-based doctor, the primary doctor is going to carry a lot of responsibility on their shoulder. And that is when I'm talking in terms of the medicines which they are going to prescribe. I'm talking about a test which they are going to order. There has to be a clear protocol. The government of Maharashtra has got a protocol for that, and when to refer to a hospital. We want the patients to come to a hospital when it can be made a difference to their life, not when they are actually to the threshold that nothing else can be offered because they have probably lost a lot of precious time just trying to understand whether to go to a hospital or not. I think these red flags have to be very clearly identified, and home care is going to be a very important thing. Another aspect which has worked really well for many hospitals is a tele-IC or a telehealth. A lot of it can be done using technology, but again, the technology has got limitations. You are actually believing and commenting on what you see and what you hear. You are still not touching the patient. You are still not seeing the patient. So that kind of we will still require some ground person, and that's why the primary health center person or the primary doctor is going to play a very important role. So home care is going to be the main aspect if the pandemic does pan out into the way it has done in the rest of the world as well.
Okay, Dr. Lahiri, what is your opinion as far as the role of the primary health centers and private clinics, the home care that Dr. Pandit is talking about? Because we haven't really seen, a lot coming from the government side, be it the center or the state governments, on the importance of these in helping us fight the current wave.
Correct question, and I really appreciate the question. And during the second wave, our West Bengal Doctors Forum, we ran a teleconsultation clinic, and that's completely free of cost. Every day, 200 of our doctors, we served our thousands of patients every day from 7 to 10 at night, shift by shift. And forget it if it is Kaushik Lahiri or somebody else. And we are worked as COVID warrior over telephone. It's most of the time the patient do not need hospitalization. They just need the proper guidance, what needs to be done. When the oxygen saturation is falling, when exactly you should do this, when exactly you should start this medicine, and what are the medicines that needs to be started, these are absolutely needed by a primary care physician's role is important. But here, I must tell you something that India is grossly deficient on physicians. We have one doctor per about 1,633 population. And this can only go up if you have proper counseling, the NEET PG and the undergraduate also. So that is one thing that is a sore point in our country. For last couple of years, we are lagging on that also. And the whole medical community, the doctors, the whole infrastructure is now tired. And every time the wave comes down, the public will do party. And just we have all the pictures of 25th celebration, 1st January celebration. Yesterday, we have video of how people are there on the beach of Goa. And they will come to the hospital. I wish all of them are well. But they will come to the hospital, to the health officials, to the doctors, to the nurses, and they will expect the best possible treatment. We are always there to help them, but there is a limit to everything. And I entirely agree with my other colleagues in the panel that please behave responsibly. Please understand that though this is a mild disease this time, but still you need to put on your mask. Please follow the COVID protocol. Otherwise, this mild disease also may have the potential to overwhelm the system. We like the best countries in the world, as my other colleague in the panel has told, also experience very bad situation. And we have till now we have handled COVID in an excellent way. But this, the third wave, we are really concerned about the numbers. Here, the role of home quarantine, isolation, the physician, all are important. We are always there to help and support. But the role of public, their responsible behavior is of utmost importance. With folded hand, this is my request to everybody who are watching this show.
Well, absolutely. That's very, very important. And Dr. Swaminathan, now I also want to understand from you about, what are the guidelines for people to be followed at this point in time? With cases rising, when is the right time to get tested? Which day is important? The key symptoms to watch out for? And even if the symptoms are mild, what kind of symptoms are we seeing at this point in time?
Again, the domestic transmission is so high that with this variant of COVID, or with Omicron, it's very unlikely for just one person to fall sick in a family. It's usually that, more people in the family have also fallen sick, all with mild disease. So that's a general tip-off that it's probably a viral communicable illness. Of course, you can't distinguish between influenza and COVID based on that. Second, if you have, the good news is as the numbers start rising, the pretest probability of it being COVID goes higher and higher. Once we are into a certain part of the curve, which will happen within the next couple of days, even without a test, the pretest probability of it being COVID for any febrile illness is going to be really, 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 really high. Therefore, I think we need to be very sensible about trying to make syndromic diagnosis and tell people, listen, if you have a runny nose and a cough and a backache and things like that, assume it's COVID and at least stay home for at least 10 days. Don't run around. This is especially so since if you look at the demographic of what the kind of people who are infected or at least symptomatic in South Africa, a lot of it seems to be in the younger age group, which is the kind of demographic that you're seeing in all these images. And that's what is really scary. Elderly people will generally stay home because you tell them that it's a health issue and they can get into severe disease and all that. Young people generally tend to think that they are immutable and therefore they are less likely to follow guidelines. And therefore, they're more likely to be running around in public places thinking that it's only a mild disease and therefore they don't need to worry. And that's exactly going to be the challenge. So any upper respiratory infection at this point of time with back pain should be COVID unless otherwise proved. And I'm personally a bigger fan of rapid antigen tests because a PCR takes too much time to turn around. It can't be done in the middle of the night and things like that. In the West, if you look at it, they are aggressively distributing rapid antigen kits to everybody, saying keep it. If you can always do it whenever you feel symptomatic and things like that. And that's helped in pick up infection very, very early. And I think we should popularize the use of rapid antigen kits on a very aggressive basis so that people can be identified very quickly and at least hopefully some form of isolation measures can be instituted before they start spreading it as aggressively as possible. So I think it needs to be a combination of measures. There are no specific symptoms that set it apart, except that, unlike Delta, you don't see so much of the loss of taste, loss of appetite. But to distinguish between this and influenza is fairly difficult, and without a test, it's just impossible.
Okay, and also one more question, Dr. Swaminathan, before I go across to Dr. Kaushik Lahiri. Is Delta still active as far as our COVID spike is concerned? Is it still dominant, or you think it's largely Omicron that is leading to this spike?
Good question. If you look at the Delta numbers, if you look at overall COVID numbers, end of December was the lowest number since May of 2020. In 1.5 years, we have not seen numbers as low as end of December of 2021. So basically, that tells you that the the Delta issue has kind of petered out to a level where it is now fairly very manageable. This is very different from the Western world, where the Delta is still running aggressively. And I think that's one of the reasons, because they have so much vulnerability to Delta, they also seem to have getting a bigger beat up with Omicron. Since we are more Delta experienced, it looks like our Omicron wave is also going to be a little less aggressive. It's not to say that your infection rate is going to be less. So obviously, most of it is going to be Omicron, and the sequencing data also seems to bear out that the relative percentage of Omicron is rising very, very fast. And if you look at what happens in South Africa, I think, a lot of it, you just go back to the South African data. Within about 2-3 weeks of the onset of the Omicron wave, literally Delta has been purged, and it's almost 100% Omicron. So I don't think we need the gene sequencing to tell us what it is. I think we should continue to do gene sequencing to identify new variants which may come out, or a reassortment of the genes to make it more virulent or more dangerous and things like that, for those reasons. But to say I'm going to track how much Omicron there is, apart from a scientific point of view, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, because to me, in another week's time, almost 90-95% of it is going to be Omicron and nothing else. And in very short order, you will not have any Delta. It's just going to be completely Omicron.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, all of you, for joining us here on this Doctors Roundtable and giving our viewers this very, very important information. The bottom line is that you need to keep your mask on. You need to ensure you are wearing your mask the moment you step out of your homes, even though the disease because of Omicron is not as severe as it was because of Delta variant, but still it is a variant of concern, and the number of case count, the way we are seeing a rise in the number of COVID and Omicron cases, we cannot really take it lightly. It can impact our health infrastructure, and it can be a big burden on our health infrastructure. So you need to ensure that you follow all the COVID rules when you step out of your home. Keep your mask on all the time. Ensure that you're following social distancing as well, and step out only if it is extremely important, so that together we are able to fight this threat of Omicron. With this, we will slip into another very, very short break. More on the other side. Stay with us.